I think why we've been successful early on. We have gritty people that are willing to kind of ride the knife's edge and get cut and bleed a little bit and then pick back up and do it again the next day. Being in this startup is so hard because you have to be constantly pushing the envelope. When you do that, you have to fail. Like you can't always be on, like I said, be on the knife's edge without getting cut.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by SuperCoffee, the healthy, delicious alternative to sugary coffee drinks. SuperCoffee was recently named the fastest growing food and beverage brand in America by Inc. magazine, and after tasting a bunch of their flavors, I can see why. Their coffees contain zero sugar, and many of them contain 10 grams of plant-based protein. They're growing in popularity in the running community, and I'm excited to share a special discount with you. They offer a 60-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you don't love it, you get your money back, no questions asked. Grab 15% online with the code FTLR or look for them nationwide in 25,000 stores like Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, Kroger, and CVS. Cheers. This episode is brought to you by KINeSYS. It's sunscreen, just better. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, and given that skin cancer runs in my family, I'm proud to partner with and share KINeSYS with you. Now that I'm up in the mountains of Colorado, skincare and sun protection is more important than ever, especially with summer just around the corner. Their sunscreen spray makes application simple, and there's no scent or fragrance either. It's different than any sunscreen you've tried, and so light you won't even feel you're wearing it. Welcome back. I have Kevin Moran joining me on the podcast today. Kevin, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
For sure. The first question is always a tough one. Who is Kevin?
You should have told me before we started you're going to start with a tough one. Man, who is Kevin? Kevin is a son, a brother, a husband, and someone that is on the pursuit for better, I would say. I'm one of the co-founders of Beam, but that would probably be towards the bottom of my list of things that I am mostly, I would say.
We'll dive into all of that. So your background is in athletics. And so let's set the stage there. How did you get into athletics?
Yeah, so I grew up I'm from Massachusetts. I actually grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I played every sport I could when I was a kid. Ultimately, and kind of had an interesting experience. I wasn't the best baseball player in the world in Cape Cod, particularly in the high school side of the world. There isn't really a hotbed for baseball. And one day, I'll give you the very long story short, was a coach of mine talked me into going to this showcase. And I didn't know if I threw 80 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour. And I was 18 years old and was throwing around 90 miles an hour, which is pretty good. So I ended up getting recruited to play professionally at the collegiate level. It kind of happened overnight, and it always kind of gave me a good perspective just because it really, like I said, happened overnight.
What was it like when you got recruited and someone was like, wow, you're good at this. Let's do this.
Yeah, I went from just being like an average high school student that was, to be honest, like I liked baseball, but I wasn't like extremely passionate about it. It was something I did for fun with friends, and it really changed it changed my life. And I wasn't just, I guess to be direct, like I wasn't really just recruited. I was heavily recruited really quickly. I went from taking the SATs like any junior in college to being offered scholarships by some of the best baseball schools in the country. I ended up going to Boston College. The recruiting process was crazy and kind of a whirlwind. And I didn't realize it then, but I think the lesson it taught me now is just like, you just never know what's going to happen in life from one day to the next. Some good things, some bad, but that was certainly a exciting experience. I didn't know what was going to be on the other end of that either. I kind of just thought, hey, this is like, I hit the jackpot. Like I'm going to go to Boston College, which is a school I otherwise couldn't have gotten into, and a place I never dreamed of playing baseball. And then, once I got there were other, special things on the other end of that I wasn't expecting either.
What part of the Cape did you grow up on?
Barnesville.
Nice. My parents just moved to Sandwich a couple of years ago, so love the area.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a good it's a good spot. I missed it. It's one of those things too in life you don't appreciate until I didn't realize living 5-10 minutes from the beach in every direction was as cool as it is.
Yes. So, so you go from Barnstable, cross the Sagamore Bridge. You're at Boston College after waiting in all that traffic on 93 North. What's on the other side of your time at Boston College?
Yeah, that was on the other side after my time at Boston College. I mean, at BC, I think I learned a lot about myself, like discipline and hard work, which I think has really kind of carried me into the entrepreneurial world that I'm in now. But I mean, right after Boston College, I was fortunate. I got drafted when I was a junior in school, and like I said, I kind of wasn't expecting very much when I went to BC, and then every year just kind of continued to stay focused and work harder and harder. And then I ended up getting drafted in the ninth round by the Chicago White Sox my junior year and left school. And I signed and, like I said, played professionally, which that's a whole other story, which I'm happy to get into if you want. What kind of went on from there? Want me to keep diving a little bit deeper there?
Yeah.
Um, so after I never had any injuries at all in college baseball, and after I got drafted, I played for a year. Then I had Tommy John surgery, which is a major elbow surgery, which is about a year rehab. While I was rehabbing my elbow, I hurt my knee in the gym and had to have surgery on my left knee. And then I came back from both of those after rehabbing for a couple of years, and I hurt my right knee and had to have that done. Came back from all of those injuries, was pitching again, and this is like, fast forward now we're 3 or 4 years later. I tore my rotator cuff in my labrum in my shoulder. So that one I didn't have done. The White Sox wanted me to stay in Phoenix for another year and do some PT and then see if I wanted to get shoulder surgery from there. But for me, there was somebody or something was telling me, right, that this probably wasn't the path I needed to take in life. And I had subsequently gone back to school during all those injuries and gotten my degree. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that it was time. Which kind of sounds crazy, but at the ripe age of, what was that, 22, 23 years old, to retire from baseball.
What was your degree in?
Business management. I was in the Carroll School of Management, which honestly, I love BC. I learned a lot. It was really difficult for being a baseball player there. We were the only northern team in a Southern Conference, the ACC. So we traveled so much. It was so difficult. A class like accounting, right, where like every principal builds on another principal, to continue to miss class and to not be the most academically inclined person in the world. It was a bad mix. I used to say D's get degrees.
Why did you pick business management?
Everybody told me to, and I didn't know what else to do, I'd say, just to be honest with you. I mean, I knew that I wanted to be, I knew that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and I even knew that like while I was playing baseball too. And after baseball, I ended up working for a big tech company for about 5-6 years before we started Beam, which is kind of another whole different journey in life, which is where I found endurance sports, which I loved through that. But I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I wasn't sure what it was, and I think that was kind of the first path.
My story from an educational perspective is similar. I went to UMass Amherst, studied sport management and marketing because everyone told me that's what I would love the most. And it wasn't until I got into the school that I realized that like this is the number 1 or number 2 program in the country for this major. I was like, yeah, I'll apply. Like pretty naive kid from Needham, where everybody else applies to UMass Amherst and the Eisenberg School, and so I did it, and I ended up running my own baseball league at UMass, and I did it because I just wanted to play baseball, and it turned into a little business, and we had a local burrito shop, giving us $5,000 a year to run the league, and
Awesome.
we got a lot of free burritos out of it too. So
that's all you really care about when you're in college, anyways, free burritos.
Totally. I mean, he gave me a stack of like $250 $10 $10 cards, and I was like, we only have 75 people in this league. What are we gonna do? And what are we gonna do with all these? Yeah, it's funny how that works, because like the lessons from that experience, like you can't replace that with classroom learning.
Honestly, man, like what I learned so much in school was like it was such a grind. It was the business school at BC is really difficult, and trying to do 2 things at a really high level is really difficult. So to try to play baseball, and like I said, I wasn't expecting to get drafted. When I was a freshman, sophomore, towards my sophomore year, I realized that I was onto something. But there's a lot of pressure there at that age too. Which when I look back, you think you're a grown up to some extent, but like I don't think I was ready for some of that pressure. I was getting I was having a lot of pro teams come and interview me and do psychological analysis and all sorts of different things. I do that at 1 o'clock and then go take a stats test at 2 o'clock. You know what I mean? And then have to pitch at 5 o'clock with 30 scouts watching. It was an interesting experience and definitely pressure packed for what was I think I was 20, 19, 20 when I got drafted.
Do you think all that experience led you to where you are now? And the reason I ask this is I've been talking to Aaron, who was a guest on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I saw a tweet about Beam the other day that said, "We're not a CBD company, we're a wellness company."
Yeah.
And do you feel like all of your experiences around it's not just the physical aspect, it's the mental aspect, it's the recovery. You went through, a handful of surgeries, like all of that is what it takes to be an athlete. And did that lead to where you are now? Or how did that lead to where you are now?
Yeah, I'd say it's super analogous to being an athlete and doing anything hard is really analogous to starting a business. I'd say there was certainly you have to be able to handle pressure as an entrepreneur. I would say that I definitely got used to, and I certainly wasn't good at it in the beginning, and I'm not the best in the world at it now, but I've certainly come a long way over the years. It's about progress, not perfection, right? And then, what I learned more, I think, from baseball is that, like I said, I got getting drafted pretty high and expecting to. When I got drafted, I thought I'm 32 now or 31. I'll be 32 soon. I expected to be in the major leagues still at this point in my career. Um, and I think having something that was so expected in your mind taken away from you when ultimately, like, I was not the lazy guy not working on his arm to stay healthy. I was the crazy guy that was eating all the right food and doing all the right stuff to stay healthy, and I still couldn't stay healthy. So I think going through that experience at a young age gave me the perspective that sometimes things, regardless of how hard you try, don't work out. And ultimately, you have to pick yourself back up and reinvent yourself and do something else different. And through that experience, like that's where the fun happens in life, is that unknown. So I think learning that was something that was definitely helpful at a young age and gave me good perspective starting Beam because we deal with them on a daily basis here.
For sure. Where did the endurance sport come into play?
When I stopped playing baseball, I think it was so abrupt and like I think it pissed me off a lot that I had to stop doing something competitive like that, and went into the corporate world and I just was a little underwhelmed, I would say, by like the lack of competition and hustle and go getterness that I just wanted to do something crazy. And I'm 6'4", 220, or I was then. I'm not as heavy now as I was then. I was a lot more muscly then. My wife's dad had done a few Ironmans. He's still an absolute beast. He's 72? I think he's doing another Ironman this year.
Wow.
So when I stopped playing, he bought me like a $500-600 bike and was like, I think you're gonna like this. Like, why don't you just go on this? So I did, and honestly, like ever since then, I was just hooked. You as an endurance athlete, it just progresses, and there's more things, and you want to do more and more, and spend more and more money in the sport. And it was fun. It just became a passion of mine.
What was that first race like?
So I stopped playing baseball in, I want to say, I forget the year, but let's just say March. And then I did an Olympic triathlon in June. And I had never swam distance or ridden a bike or run probably more than 5 miles.
So how did you get in the right headspace to be able to be like, I'm going to do 3 things I've never done before?
I just did it. And honestly, that's why it's so analogous to entrepreneurship too. Like, we're fortunate, Matt and I, at this stage of the company, to get to talk to a lot of great early entrepreneurs. And there's like so many reasons not to do anything. I'm just like, yeah, to your point, like I had never done any of that stuff. I had no business doing that, but the expert in everything was once a beginner. So I think, like, for me, I've said it before, like with in that moment or an Ironman, like if you think of the whole thing in totality, like the whole race, that it becomes very daunting and concerning. I think for me, it was like just one stroke at a time, then you're out of the water. And it's like, oh man, I'm out of the water. Oh my God, I'm on the bike. Like I got up that hill. Okay, I'm almost done with the bike. Now I got to run 6 miles. That's easy.
Right.
It's so much the same with a business.
Yeah, I love the comparison from endurance sport to the business world, because
I've yet to find a better analogy.
yeah, it's like you can't eat an elephant all in one bite. And it's true
Totally.
in, if you're a $10 million company, if you want to be a $10 million company and you're doing, 500,000 a year, like you can't scale like that overnight. And just like you can't pick an Ironman triathlon or an Olympic triathlon or a marathon or whatever and say, I'm going to do this tomorrow. It's like you got to take bites out of the elephant one day at a time. And the sum of all bites equals, sorry, vegans, the sum of all bites equals, equals a done deal.
And I think that what I think is it also so analogous. Like you can't fake it. Like you
Right.
cannot fake the environment.
Right.
Like you have to put in the work, or like you will get you get physically hurt, or it's just gonna be an absolutely hellish
Miserable.
miserable.
Yeah.
Like you have to so desperately want to do it, and that's the same thing with an entrepreneur. And like it's particularly like in a for us, high skepticism, low trust space in our category. So like you are constantly a salmon swimming upstream. Like you have to just wear that and drink that in like for fuel every day. And you have to want to do that.
So why do you think some people gravitate towards startups in the entrepreneur world? So I've never worked in a non-startup environment, and I can't imagine ever doing that. But there are obviously people who can't imagine the uncertainty that comes with a startup world or a small business. So what do you think are the qualities that allows someone to be successful in this type of world?
Well, to be successful in the type of world, I would say is, we're, what are we, 17 full-time people now? And before everyone gets hired, they go through the interview process. And then some of the folks we rate them on a grit scale from 1 to 10. And if they're not over 7 on the grit scale, they're not gonna
I
work out.
love that.
And that could be the person that you could have all the aptitude in the world. Let's say we want to hire you to be a finance person. You can know accounting and finance better than anybody in the world. But if we don't recognize you as someone that has a tremendous amount of grit, we're not going to hire you. And we're going to hire somebody that has less mental aptitude or less skill and is more gritty always, all the time. And that's what's been, I think, why we've been successful early on. We have gritty people that are willing to kind of ride the knife's edge and get cut and bleed a little bit and then pick back up and do it again the next day. Being in a startup is so hard because you constantly pushing the envelope. When you do that, you have to fail. Like you can't always be on, like I said, be on the knife's edge without getting cut. So you have to be like comfortable, like getting those scars. And if you're not, it's just not going to work out. So like rapid failure and iteration. And to me, like that's why people want to be at a startup too, is because you can come to an environment, particularly like at Beam as an example, we almost take the reins off so much. We hire people because they have domain expertise and we're just like, go do this. Like people will ask us when they first start, Matt and I as the founders or some of the other leaders in the team, like, hey, is it okay if I do this? And it's like, well, why are you asking? We hired you because you're smarter than us and just go do it,
Yeah, I love it. So I joined my job. There weren't even 10 other employees. I was reporting to the CEO at the time, and he said, if you're not failing frequently, you're not doing it right.
Totally.
And we have almost 90 employees now, and we wouldn't be at 90 employees 10 plus years later without like lots and lots and lots of failure. And it's just like a microcosm of life, right? Like if you're not shooting your shot on a daily basis, like you're not going to progress. And so I think a lot of people are like very comfortable being comfortable. And the reason that so many endurance athletes are so successful in the business world, I think, is because we're comfortable with failure and we're comfortable taking risks that somebody who doesn't practice risk taking every single day and putting themselves out there every single day, they just don't do it.
100%. I mean, that's very well said. I mean, that's what we drill down on with people. Like before you accept, hey, this is your offer, but like, by the way, like you're going to fail a lot. This is going to be really painful. Like we're just telling you, you're going to hate this at times. So just make sure you're comfortable with that. Yeah, I think that's why people want, particularly in today, like, you want to have ownership and you want to have the ability to like, fail, but also win at a high level and to see an idea that you bring to fruition, like actually move the company forward, which I think is really tantalizing and exciting for a lot of people. If you work at a big corporation, you can have an idea. It has to go through multiple levels of approval or whatever to actually see an impact. And to some degree, I think it's really exciting for people to come here and do that, or to other startups and have an idea, see it happen, see it be implemented, and see the results of
And
that.
own it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting.
Talk to me more about failure. What's a defining objective failure that led to success or led to something different in the future for you?
In the company or my personal life?
Either.
I mean, honestly, man, I mean, we talked about baseball. I mean, that was like, it's funny, Matt played professional hockey for a number of years and stopped playing because of injuries and other sorts of stuff. We were talking to another woman on our team, Alexa. She's a really, really great singer, which no one knew until we
It was
saw.
somebody's birthday and you were singing happy birthday.
Exactly. It was very impressive. Someone shared a YouTube video of her. She didn't see it quite like this, but Matt and I were talking to her in a one-on-one, and it was kind of, we said, why don't you sing anymore? Why don't you go out and do gigs? She said, I do sometimes, but I kind of feel like it's not like the world that I'm in. And, from my perspective, it was so impressive. And I'm sure from her perspective, Matt and I playing professional sports was impressive, but all three of us kind of to some degree look at it like a failure. You know what I mean? So I think that ultimately, like, that failure and wanting to, I don't know if it's like some type of mental issue that I had with it, like wanting to so desperately make something a success that was my own, that I could control, which is a little bit narcissistic in a way, but at the same time, I think that's definitely what led to like the inception of Beam, I would say. For Matt and I both, we both have that like buried deep inside of us, for better or worse, as athletes,
For sure. So Beam has been a sponsor of this podcast. I appreciate your support. This podcast is not intended to be an infomercial for Beam. The reason that I wanted to have Kevin on is, first of all, I love the entrepreneurship lifestyle and mentality, and I feel, as Kevin has shared, all of these lessons that we learn in training and business and life, like they all are, like, somebody asked me in an interview the other day, have any of the lessons you've learned in running carried over into life? I said, yes, all of them. And
Mm-hmm.
the same is true in startup life. Many of the things we learn in this world carry over into endurance. And so the goal of having Kevin on here is to hear these takeaways that he's learning in this environment, and how it's so relevant to so many of what you guys are doing. So I'm curious. I forget where I was going with that, but I'm going to dive into something else. I was going to ask. I guess this was it. So, what is the high level, elevator pitch of Beam? We'll start from there.
Yeah, like you said in that tweet, we're not a CBD company; we're a wellness company. Matt and I looked at the space early on with CBD and saw a great market opportunity because athletes, people like you, people like everyone listening to this, and people in our networks through athletics did not understand the category. Our thesis was that CBD would, over time, in which it's coming there, it's growing there, but still slower than we expected, would just become a lifestyle supplement that people take because they know it's good for them, right? It's moving in that direction. It would lose this stigma. We never wanted to build a brand around bath bombs, vapes, topicals, all of this stuff in the CBD category, because we didn't think folks with an active lifestyle would be interested in those types of products. And we thought over time CBD would just become an ingredient like anything else. So you see, like, our dream product as an example is melatonin, magnesium, reishi, L-theanine, plus our CBD, all to create a certain effect. CBD is just a portion of that concoction, if you will. So over time, it's just going to continue to evolve, and we'll take customer feedback on the products and the things that they want, but ultimately a company to help people not just with one area of their wellness, but multiple areas. And some of those products will include CBD, some of them won't. I know you probably know we just launched a hydration line with no CBD in them. So we'll just continue to evolve and move with what our customers want and tell us, and grow from there.
Thanks again to SuperCoffee for supporting this episode. I have been loving their French vanilla and hazelnut flavors and the cold brew cans. SuperCoffee combines the caffeine from 2 cups of coffee with protein and healthy fats to give you hours of focused energy with no jitters or crash. I love it as a strong start to the day. Receive 15% off of your purchase at drinksupercoffee.com/FTLR or use the code FTLR at checkout. I recommend trying one of their variety packs or bundles. If you give it a try, let me know what you think. Thanks again to KINeSYS Sunscreen for supporting this episode. Everything from the ergonomic bottle to the ingredients they include and also leave out have been developed specifically for those of us who love to stay active and be outdoors. Available in select retailers and online, grab a 15% discount with the code FTLR and step up your sun protection game this spring and summer. Visit them at KINeSYSactive.com. That's KINeSYS active.com. And now back to our conversation. So 2021, or 2020 and 2021, people are discovering that their time is valuable and work is, we should be working to live, not living to work. And so a lot of people are rethinking their relationship with work. So you're clearly invested, pun intended, in the company and the space that this company occupies in the endurance world, in the strength world, and whatnot. I think a lot of people who are in a job that's not related to their hobby or passion are thinking about that. And I've seen a lot more small businesses start in the last year. People either have more time on their hands or they want to do more with the time that they're focusing on work. So, what is your relationship with working in a space that's the same as your hobbies and passions? And we can start there, because the reason I ask is a lot of people have said, so I'm I do a lot of interviewing and hiring and whatnot, and I always caution people who are coming from outside of the endurance world into the endurance world that, like, this is like, it's still work, even though it's like you're in a fun space. So I'm curious what your relationship is with work and play.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about the company is that for me and for Matt, and for pretty much, not for pretty much, for everybody that works for the company, is it's a natural extension of them as a person too.
Right.
So it's really exciting to be talking about products that you're passionate about and to be in a space that you're passionate about. My relationship with work, I guess I'll start with play because that's probably an easier one. I don't do a lot of play at this point. I would say I definitely squeak out the runs and rides and lifts that I want on a daily basis. But I guess I won't sugarcoat the work side of it, kind of in the spirit of a lot of the other discussion we've had. I mean, we've raised north of $10 million at this stage of the company. Gosh, I think closer to 13 million bucks. There are 17 people on the team that have voted, with their wallets and with their voice to come work for our company and believe in Matt and I's dream from the very beginning. So I take that obligation really seriously, both of those things. So I think I feel that stress and the weight of those things like to a really, really high degree. And I know Matt does too. So I probably work, and I wouldn't say an unhealthy amount, but I would say a very focused, intense amount at this stage of the company, where we're at a stage where we have product market fit and it's about scale and growth and all of those things. So I'd say I definitely work more. I'm not getting as many 5-hour bike rides in as I used to. I would say, but those will hopefully come at another point in life. It's all about riding the wave to some extent.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the waves are what make it interesting. If it were easy, you wouldn't be doing it, I'm guessing.
To caveat that, I mean, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. Like, I'm very passionate about the opportunity and fortunate, and I'm learning so much. I think part of what, back to the startup conversation, is why people want to be at startups. Like, there's just so much information thrown at you on a daily basis. I learn. Honestly, I'm so much smarter than I was 2 weeks ago. And then 2 weeks from now, I'm going to look back at these 2 weeks and say, man, you were so dumb 2 weeks ago. Like, it's just a constant evolution, which I think is really cool. So I'm happy to be doing all that work. It's just a lot,
Yeah. Talk to me about the pressure of $13 million in cash that you've raised and 17 people's livelihoods, including your own. Is that motivating? Is there an aspect of fear in that? How do you grapple with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think back to the beginning too, like I think I didn't realize this when I was going through that in college, right at that young age, but it's very analogous to that experience in my life. I think I'm more mature and I can handle a little bit better than I did then. Not that I handled it poorly then. It's easier for me to absorb and kind of like come out the other end with a clear mind. But yeah, there's definitely some pressure. I mean, investors know what they're getting into. I mean, that's why it's called venture capital, right? And why people invest in companies. But I have some friends, my family, my wife's family, some other people invested this money, and I don't want to lose it. I have this reoccurring dream. I've said this a few times where in particularly stressful moments for the company, where I'm at a barbecue and like everybody that's invested in the company is there with Matt and I. No one will talk to me because the company's failed. It's funny, but at the same time, it's like, dude, you need to take a little bit of a break, maybe. So yeah, there's definitely some pressure, but like, it's what I signed up for. It's what it's what I want. You can't do big things in life without big pressure. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to, like, you can't get one without the other. And I think I'd be speaking out of both sides of my mouth if I said I wanted to build like $1 billion generational wellness brand, but not have the perseverance and the tact to be able to manage investors and a team, you know?
Yeah, it's the same thing with endurance. Like if you cross the finish line and the whole thing was easy and you didn't have any hiccups in training,
Exactly.
what's the point?
It's all part of it. And we're going to get bigger and there's going to be more obstacles and there's going to be probably more investment dollars and more people and more mistakes, but it's all part of the journey. And I think if you just over time, if you do more things right than wrong, ultimately you have the perseverance and the grit to not focus on the wrong things too much, just like in training to your point, ultimately, really good things happen. They stack up over time.
Totally. This is just another reference to process versus outcome, right? Like if you went to bed tonight and tomorrow you woke up as $1 billion company, then what?
For
It's
us,
like,
I know.
yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be boring. So talk to me about. I love asking about success and what people define success as. And the reason that I find this to be so interesting is last year I started asking this question to Olympians and people who want to be Olympians. Want to be Olympians sounds wrong, but people who are aspiring to be Olympians. And I ask, fast forward 5 to 10 years, what are you proud of? And these athletes who are being paid to compete and represent the country don't give an objective answer. It's very subjective and qualitative versus like I made an Olympic team and I won gold. So I'm curious for you, how do you define success?
personally or in the business or both, I
Let's
guess.
do both. Yeah. Let's start
Um,
personally.
yeah, I'd say that's like constantly a moving target. I think like as you get new inputs and data points, like your definition of success evolves in life. I think for me now, it's like just to be. It sounds corny to an extent, like to be the best person that I can and to be a good husband to my wife and just like to support her and not put myself and my business before her dreams and her aspirations. I'd say that's a really important thing and something that I'm cognizant of on a daily basis, just because I'm moving very quickly and the company is evolving very quickly and becoming bigger than probably we anticipated in the beginning. So I think like keeping all those things top of mind and just being, like I said earlier, the family member and the husband that I should be, I think is definitely on the top of my list. And just trying to stay, what Matt and I use this all the time, happy, healthy, whole, just as much as I possibly can, which is tough these days. So um, a moving target, and I think my personal definition changes often. On the business side, I think it's starts with our customers, creating like a lot of value for our customers, simply put, through our products and through our content and through who we want to be as a brand. And if we're able to do that with our customers, that translates to two other personal goals. One being, I mentioned the fiduciary responsibility to investors, right? To have a good financial outcome. So I think that's definitely a success from an investment standpoint. But more important to me, probably even more so than that, is to make sure the team over the folks that have been here over the last few years and will continue to join, and to make sure that they leave here better people in terms of the experience that they have from a business perspective, that they learn their skills, they have more grit, they have more empathy, they become different leaders in their next job, but also for them in their personal lives. And that's also one of the beauties of startup, is that business and personal lives are blended together pretty quickly. So I think that they leave in a better personal spot in their life too, which is I'd say a big goal. But all of those things combined, I think, would make this a success. One without the other, I don't think is a success.
For sure. So as a wellness company who is also in a high growth period, how do you create the culture around corporate wellness from an individual standpoint? I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess I do mean it that way. How do you ensure your employees are working hard, but they're also balanced and happy and fulfilled?
Yeah, it's hard. It's we have a very demanding culture, and like just to be direct on it, like we expect pace and exceptional results within the team. And mediocrity like does not fly for a second at the company, and everybody knows that joins. You can kind of feel it from day one. So how do you do that, right? With also like being respectful to people at the same time? I'd say that's probably one of the hardest things that we have to continue to balance. I think, Matt and I, it's as leaders, it's important to be empathetic. I think one of the things that I've learned over the few years is that almost everybody has something going on in their personal life that's the distraction for them. And it's important to be empathetic to that and to turn the screws on the things that really need to have the screws turned to them, and then to maybe back off a little bit on the things that aren't nearly as mission critical as some of the things that are more important. It's a fine balance. And if you turn the screws on too many things, then you have people overworked, overstressed. And we've done that before. And we're probably doing it right now to some degree. So we've done that. And I just like being empathetic to that and listening to the team, the leaders on the team that probably cover some of our blind spots in those areas. But it's constant work in progress. We do things that, just from a corporate perspective that are important. We give folks a wellness stipend as well. So you can go out and buy a Peloton or whatever you want up to a certain amount of dollars every year within the company. We have a no policy vacation policy, things like that. Great benefits, but those things only take you so far, right? It's how you get treated and the love that you feel from the team. So it's a work in progress, but those are some of the things I'd say.
For sure. So I had Patrick Lemieux on the podcast. He's a sports agent and Gwen Jorgensen's husband, a fellow Beam athlete, and we talked about the impact of COVID on social media and sponsorship and athletes and whatnot from the athlete side. And so I'm curious from your side, what has been the impact from everything we've seen in the last year on your business, and how did you take it and pivot and make it a potentially a positive?
Yeah, honestly, I hate to even say this. There's been so many horrible things that have happened, with COVID. We were so lucky and so fortunate that we built a business that the distribution channel was direct to consumer on e-commerce. We had no retail presence, and we have products that help people with stress, sleep, and anxiety. So it's pretty tough.
Good time for that.
Yeah. So we had tailwinds from COVID, which we were really fortunate. And I kind of pinch myself every day still that there's so many horrible stories that you hear from folks for no fault of their own. So it was taking that and understanding. And I think the interesting thing from COVID was, and learning this as kind of owning my own business, is that when there's demand issues, when there's more demand than expected, there's also that creates logistical and supply chain issues. So like you go from solving one problem to the other. It's just like it's nonstop, whatever end of the coin you're on. So we spent the middle part of 2020, solving some supply chain stuff and building redundancy within our supply chain with vendors and just dealing with growth. And honestly, we're still struggling to get ahead of it to the point we want, just because we continue to grow more rapidly than we expected. So that's been exciting, but also, like we were talking about it before, like terrifying at the same time. And just kind of leaning into it and just just evolving and making mistakes and growing. But we've been really fortunate the last, year and a half or so.
And then how has the impact of social media and the lack of races? I know there have been a lot of CrossFit athletes that use the product, and an evolving and growing number of endurance athletes. With the removal of the CrossFit Games last year and the deferment of the Olympics and everything that allows for representation and competition, how did that impact your strategy?
Well, first of all, it's heartbreaking for the athletes. Like, that's being an athlete myself. Like, I can't even freaking imagine that. With some of those races, the CrossFit Games, particularly the Olympics, that's just brutal. It allowed us we had some experiential plans at some of those things. It didn't allow us to activate with the athletes, and CrossFit's a good example. We work with some of the best athletes in the space, with Brooke, Tia, Matt, Katrin. It didn't allow us to activate with them on site. So from a marketing perspective, it kind of changed our plans, and we shifted some dollars into other areas that we otherwise probably would have spent there. Activating on site at somewhere like the CrossFit Games is an example. It changed the strategy.
It's a wild place. I've been there. It's just like quite an experience.
It's quite something. It's amazing, man. I've had some long, exhausting days there. Hopefully we've grown enough where I don't have to spend every day in the booth for 15 hours, whatever it is.
I was at the one in Southern California, and I spent 3 days standing in a parking lot when it was 100 degrees. I was like, this is fun.
We did that. We've done those a lot. We did Wadapalooza. I've done I mean, gosh, from going back to the very beginning, Matt and I we were so nuts in the beginning with the brand and trying to get things out there and hit some short-term revenue goals. We used to sit outside of Core Power Yoga with a table like in March in Boston where it was like 40 degrees. My wife was like, what is wrong with you guys? So we've done the hot days in Miami at Wadapalooza in a big booth all the way down to like complete idiots outside of a Core Power in Boston.
Talk to me about the relentlessness of something like that. And for someone who's, in maybe a big corporate job, what are some of the skills that you think are necessary to survive in an environment like this?
There's so many, man. Honestly, the perfect is the enemy of great, I'd say. Like if you try to get things right, you'll just get gobbled up by the competition. We live by the 80% rule. If something's like 80% good enough, we need to move and just do it. Progress, not perfection. Like there's so many different buzzwords and things you could say there. I'd say that's part of it, and being relentless and just expecting the unexpected. I would say being comfortable making mistakes, stuff that we've talked about throughout this podcast on some of those areas, and just like you said, just being relentless and being able to get up and continue to do it day after day. There's a lot of things. I'd say a general rule of thumb is like that thing that you don't want to do because it's like Friday at 5 or 7 or Saturday at noon. That's like feels like a little bit of a pain in the ass. You just got to do it. So like that's what I would say.
So the reason I like having people like you on the podcast is because you just answered that question as related to startup life.
Yeah.
But if you go back and listen to the start of your answer without hearing the question, I could have just asked you, what does it take to be a successful athlete? Or what does it take to be a successful human? And any of that is relevant in any arena.
I know. I mean, yeah, totally. You're very right.
So switching gears a little bit, if you could go back to the version of Kevin that was standing outside Core Power on a 40-degree Boston morning with blustering winds and probably some
in the
hail.
seaport. How bad this?
Oh God.
Yeah.
What would you tell that guy?
That's a great question. That you don't need to do it all today, I would say. It's going to be like some of the things I just said to myself a couple answers ago, but to just slow down a little bit, to go faster. You don't need to do it all today. Take it as it comes, and just continue to have an open mind and just listen. And ultimately, and I honestly need to say some of those things to myself right now. Like when I look at some of the crazy things that have happened in the brand, like you just mentioned, those CrossFit athletes, those weren't in the picture when I was sitting outside of that Core Power. Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns was an investor. Danica Patrick wasn't an investor in the company. We have some other folks that are huge names that are, investors in the company. Billy Horschel on the PGA Tour, all the endurance athletes you just mentioned. That just to take a breath and ultimately just to continue to work hard and to trust your gut and your intuitions and to go from there. I think one thing that we did early on well was not everybody, when you're super early, and I guess a good lesson for entrepreneurs is everybody has an opinion as to how you should do something. I would say continue to, and we do that well today too, continue to trust your convictions and your own intuition, because no one knows the business better than you do. I mean, when I talk to other entrepreneurs now and that are starting, I'm just like, take all of my advice with a grain of salt. You know your business better than I do. Like you're the one that thought of it. It's in your heart and your brain. So I'd say continue to trust your intuition.
Cool. In that sort of retrospection there, you alluded to, or you spoke to a lot of these amazing things that you've accomplished over the years or people you've brought into the mix or whatnot. I like to do the same thing, not daily or weekly, but every so often, like take a look and like see how far you've come and never get comfortable, resting on your laurels. Because once you get comfortable, you're dead. And that's the enemy of progress. And it's sort of in line with gratitude. So I'm curious, is gratitude something you intentionally practice, or is it sort of second nature?
It's probably second nature. And again, I probably don't do enough of it. Erin, actually, who you mentioned, like I would say celebrating wins, like you said, and also being gracious and having gratitude. But Erin's always constantly reminding us a funny story. Again, being back in Boston in the Seaport when we closed our seed round of funding, Matt and I were just like, everyone was so happy at the team. There's only, I think, 3 or 4 people on the team at the time, Erin being one of them. I was like, we need to go celebrate this. And Matt and I are like, why? It's just like kind of like I view it like it's like a stop on the train, and we're not quite to the destination yet. So like this is just stop A. We need to get to stop D. So why are we celebrating this? So I think definitely we've learned over the years to like look back and be a little bit more gracious, but not to the point of resting on your laurels and not keeping the pedal to the metal. But that's also a constant work in progress. Is that practice, and we suck at that. I'd say Matt and I in particular as founders. There's other folks that are better about it on the team.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a balance because it's startup life, and I'm in sales, and it's very much like a what have you done lately versus what'd you do
Totally, yeah.
last week. But there has to be that balance.
You're constantly like afraid of dying in the startup. Like even at this point, like at product market fit, like you're constantly like it's like a healthy level. You have to have like a very like you have to be incredibly overly optimistic, but you also have to have like a very healthy level of paranoia, unhealthy level of paranoia. So,
For sure. Did you run or bike today?
I didn't. I actually that's why I asked you if this is gonna be on video because I have grease on my shirt because I just went to the bike shop to pick up my bike right before we hopped on. I biked yesterday. Uh, don't get me started. I have a sweet Pinarello bike and the frame just cracked on it unexpectedly. So I've been riding my TT bike, my Ironman bike, which is like not nearly as comfortable. So I'm trying to get it fixed and all first world problems.
Yeah, it's the bike maintenance is fun. I had two bikes shipped out here, and I finally assembled them both. And
Oh,
I haven't been on a bike in I don't know months, and I can't wait to go ride some gravel today.
for the
Um,
riding is awesome.
the riding here is awesome. I've never actually done it, but I've seen a lot of amazing Instagram posts about it.
Exactly.
So you're going to get out for a ride, or you're going to get out soon. Why?
I do my best thinking there. And honestly, I do think it's like my biggest de-stressor. I think everybody needs something to de-stress, whether it's reading a book or whatever you do. Um, Running and riding in particular, I come back with like I don't know, I just feel so much better. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I mean, you know the feeling.
Yeah. Do
Like,
you make it a do you make it a priority?
totally. Yeah. I exercise 5 to 7 days a week. I definitely make it a priority.
So here's Kevin, the co-founder of a company aspiring to be $1 billion company with $13 million in investor money and 17 lives to support, and he's saying 5 to 7 times a week, I make time for me every day. I think it's so important to hear that from someone like yourself who is in such a high stress and high importance in terms of the impact that you have on other people. And here he is saying, I need to do this for me. So this is my sort of kick in the pants to everyone listening to say, we all need to do that. We all need that space. And I do the same thing. Like my boss knows that I will run for an hour every day, or I'll go for a bike ride or whatever. And I'm off at that time. And
Mhm.
I come back and I'm better. And we're all better for this time that we spend on ourselves. And at first I thought it was selfish. And the more I talk to people like yourself, it's anything but. And it's like you have to invest in yourself so that you can, be there for others. And I would always say, like, I love to travel because you get the reminder, like, put your own mask on first before helping those around you. And I'm flying next week, and I'm I'm gonna smile when I hear that for the first time in 14 months. But it is so true. So thank you for sharing that piece there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would caveat with it. It's not, they're not as difficult of workouts that I'd like sometimes, but like I definitely am getting things done. I mean, and I get some tough days in, I would say, but ultimately, like sometimes I'm just like, I'm lower energy than I'd want to be, but I get it
Yeah.
done.
Do you have any training goals at the moment?
I trained really hard last year for a while. Was doing a ton of running. For me, I was doing a lot of miles. I was doing 50, 60 miles a week, sometimes more than 60 miles a week running. Um, I don't have anything on the calendar right now. We've had such a crazy, I've been trying to be a little bit more empathetic to myself. We have such a crazy time the last like 3 or 4 months. I've been just kind of getting in what I can. My wife is training for a Chicago Marathon in
Oh,
October.
cool.
She's going to kill me if I say this, but I think she can run sub 250.
Nice. That's
So
awesome.
she's been crushing it.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I could go on for hours about this. We could create an MBA course from from your learnings. But if people want to follow along with you and your journey, where can we find you and on social?
You can find me at Kevin Moran 34, and then at Beam. It's pretty simple. It's at Beam on Instagram, awesome. And it's at Beam TLC on Twitter.
Cool. Thanks so much for taking some time to chat, and we'll see you out there.
You got it, man. This was fun. Thanks.
For sure. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.